Real ones with me, I know we gon' beat the odds. Yup. Counterfeit, guess it from the thought of it. People fake, think they need to start a kid. Tryna be real, this right here to start a kid.
Huge thank you to today's sponsor, Giant Snacks. Giants is a small family-owned business that specializes in premium flavor and giant snack sizes.
From sunflower seeds, pistachios, pumpkin seeds, and cashews, Giants has all the great snacks you need.
Don't forget some of the great flavors that they offer between dill pickle and sweet Thai chili.
Or whatever craving you have.
Check out some of the newest flavors coming to a store near you this fall.
Big Easy cashews and Big Easy sunflower seeds.
Available soon online or at a store near you. Once again, huge thank you to Giant Snacks for sponsoring this podcast.
Now let's get back to the podcast.
You ready?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Beyond the Spotlight podcast hosted by myself. My name is Jack.
And I'm Aiden.
And today we have Justin Neppl here with us, and we're in a little bit of a different set today. Do you want to tell us where we're at, Justin?
Yes, we're in the old water plant in Breckenridge. This place went out of commission about 3 years ago, when Breckenridge built the new water plant. So yeah, this thing is going to be looked to have a different purpose in the future at some point.
Yep, we'll talk about that later in the episode, so you'll have to stick around. But I'm going to give a shout out to Giant Snacks for being an amazing sponsor once again. Let's dive right into it. Today we have the pleasure of talking to Justin Neppl. Justin has been involved with the startup of over 100 businesses, as well as starting his own called Tiny Tikes. He's a school board member, a volunteer youth hockey coach, and is now an entrepreneurship teacher at the local high schools. He has been a huge part of my entrepreneurial journey and a big mentor to me over the last 3 years. Let's welcome Justin Neppl to the show.
Thank you.
Hey. Welcome. So for the people who might not know you, going off of what my intro was, can you give a 30-second elevator pitch for the people who might not know you?
Yeah, so I'm a father of three. My oldest is a senior. She's graduating from Breckenridge this year, and then I got a sophomore and a seventh grader, girl, boy, girl. Sure. They're basically my life. I chase them around and I enjoy them with all their activities and whatnot. But yeah, I think when it comes down to it, business is my life too, outside of family. And I could talk for hours, as you know, Jack, about business, and I love it. Like I love solving problems, and business wouldn't exist if there wasn't problems. So, business is fun to me. It's not even a job. It's a hobby. It's something that I just like to do.
It's a good hobby to have. And to give people context on talking about it for hours, I remember I was up in Canada fishing one time, and we were at the resort because it was like the end of the night, and we were in Bemidji, and we went to church, and they're like, we need childcare here. And you have Tiny Tikes, so I said, you got to go there, and somehow it turned into a 2.5-hour conversation on the dock, just talking about the most random stuff for business.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to go into rabbit holes on business conversation, and in the childcare world, obviously everybody has needs in all the communities, so we do actually field quite a few calls on that and interest, and expansion is always a true business owner or entrepreneurs, that's their goal, is to expand and grow, and I think we will get to that point. I just think it's going to look a little bit different than ways we've done it in the past.
So where did you grow up and go to high school, I guess?
So I grew up in southern Minnesota in a community called Redwood Falls, and I went there through my 8th grade year. We moved to Breckenridge at that point, and I graduated from Breckenridge in 2002, and kind of knew that this was the place where I wanted it to be as I grew up and started a family. So here we are, and full disclosure, my parents are both Breckenridge grads, and my grandparents are all. So I'm 3rd generation, and cool thing is my kids are a 4th generation Breck grad. So it's kind of cool to come back and have my kids go through what I went through and my parents did and grandparents before that.
And then is entrepreneurship something that you've always enjoyed, or what did you do right away, I guess?
Yeah. Middle school, I knew it. I knew I was going to be a business owner. I knew I wanted business. I just didn't know what that looked like. And that's kind of like, education, sometimes it's hard to figure that out, and it's hard to, and education a lot of times is anti-entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So to me, all that I knew to get into business was I had to go to a 4-year university and get a business administration degree and then try to figure it out. And it's probably far from that. And little value comes from that whole process to get into entrepreneurship or start your own business. So that's where that's where I love just helping other people and just talk through that. And everybody's path is different, and how they get into business, how they stay into business is different. But I knew from 7th, 8th grade time frame that I wanted to be in business. There was no doubt. My senior right now, she kind of waffles back and forth what she wants to do. To me, it was very clear. Like, I'm going to be a business owner. So
I think that's kind of abnormal. Like, it seems like everybody takes them forever to figure out what they want to do. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the biggest issue for me is I didn't know how to get into it.
Sure.
Right? I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to get into it.
Is that part of the reason why you help me so much, do you think?
100%.
Is because you're trying to...
I want to pay it forward.
Yeah.
Like, I still remember the guy that helped us buy our first commercial real estate and what that meant to us. You never forget the guys that help you get there, and that was me. And anybody who calls me up now that says like, "Hey, I need help," I'll do it. Like,
right.
I don't need to get compensated. I didn't have to pay for my first time getting into business and getting that help. I just think, and if you can get allies through the process too, other people who can, it's a tight fraternity.
Sure.
In entrepreneurship, because nobody can really understand the battles you go through. And if you have people you can call up and talk to, and you can build your fraternity that way, I mean, it's just valuable. So the ability to pay things forward and help other people, older, younger, to get into business, I'm all about it.
That's awesome. And so I approached Jack a while ago because he mentioned that he had somebody help him start a business. And I was like, okay, how do I get one of those? Like, what does that look like? Because myself wants to start a business, but like, it's so, you look at it and you're like, how do I do this?
Where do I start?
Where do I start?
Yeah.
What does it take? And that's the thing that's honestly like scary. But then when he mentioned you and that you don't like cost money, you're doing this out of kindness, out of your heart. I mean, that's something to pride yourself on too, because a lot of people would pay for that consulting. You hear it all the time online. It's like, want to start this business?
Courses and stuff.
But you have to join my course. It's like $100 a month. And it's like, well, if I'm trying to start my own business, I don't have $100 a month, But yeah, definitely that's something really, really cool that I see from you, and someday that I'd honestly like to pass down as well. If I eventually have a business that is successful, helping those who are younger, who are trying to start their own business too, that is something that I find interesting too. But that's pretty cool.
So Tiny Tikes, talk us through when you started that, and I'll have some more questions for you once we get into that. But yeah, how did you start Tiny Tikes?
Yeah, Tiny Tikes started in 2005. My wife was a graduate from MSUM in early childhood. And she kind of knew she always wanted to have her own preschool and daycare. So we were kind of like a great match, because I knew I wanted to be in business as well.
Right.
So we got an opportunity to take over a situation where somebody had just started a childcare. It's called a group in North Dakota, which is less than 30 kids in the south side of Wapton. I think we were licensed for 18 at that time. Took over that business and maintained it, but we knew very early on that we needed to grow. Our waiting list was too big, too long, and I think within the first 2 years we exited out of that lease and actually purchased our first commercial real estate on the south side of Wapton. It was an old office space for a manufacturer, and we converted it into a child care center. We were licensed for 49 at that time, so we essentially doubled, tripled our capacity, and within about 2 years, we had built our waiting list up. It was probably a little bit longer than that. I think we were there probably for 6-7 years, And then we had built our waiting list up big enough where I think we were full at 49 and we had 75 kids on the waiting list.
Wow.
So we knew we had to grow, and the regulations had changed. So at that time when we had fit up the office space, we could get away with, limited bathrooms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But to grow into that, we would have to take a current space and put bathrooms in every single room. Well, that's not cheap to do. So when we were looking at the available space in the Wapton area, we couldn't really find anything that we could buy that would be big enough and be cost effective to retrofit. So we had to settle on building, and that's what we ended up doing. We had to put that deal together, and we built a 10,000 square foot building, which is not cheap to do. We had to
But you did some things yourself too, right? The flooring.
Yeah.
So you kind of made it worth your time.
Yep. Some of that was out of necessity. These are the things that entrepreneurs have to deal with. So when we were going through the process of securing our financing, right, wrong, or indifferent, our builder had forgot to put in the electrical bid. So when we had to go get an appraisal done and get our final financing, we were $100,000 short. So we had one of two decisions to make. And because we were bumping up to where we could dig and put cement in, and because we were in the fall, we could either pivot very quickly and figure out how to install flooring and cut out other things that we were going to have somebody else do, and do it ourselves and try to figure out how to save $100,000, or just kick the project down for the springtime and then try to figure out our financing and put it together. We did the first option, where we figured out how to do it and get the project down $100,000 to make a go of it based on appraisals and approval of financing. It's just things that you have to do as a business owner, entrepreneur, is even at the 11th hour where you think you got everything figured out, you don't. And then you pivot to do that. And yeah, I laid more flooring than I even cared to do.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive that you did that. What are some other, within Tiny Tikes, what are some other big challenges that you had to face that maybe people, not everyone knows how to, run a daycare. What are some of the biggest challenges that you guys go through?
Well, it's probably a little cliche, and it's not as big of a problem anymore, but staffing. Mm-hmm. The regulations within childcare require, infants 4-to-1, toddlers 5-to-1, and preschools, 10-to-1 roughly. And, depending on ages and whatnot, well, the state requires for every 4 infants in there, you have to have 1 staff. So it's not like we can just run short. If somebody's sick, we got to have somebody there. And so it's a big challenge. So with us, where we're licensed at, we're having 15 people in our building most days.
It's a lot to pay people.
It's a lot to pay people, and it's a lot to keep on staff and whatnot. So, and when you look at childcare, childcare is all about management. You have to manage your staff because your ratios and all that other stuff, but you also have to manage the schedule, because if you kept all your staff there all the time, your costs can get out of control, and then now you're not profitable. And my wife, Jamie, does a great job on that. She understands that very well, and we can stay, from a profitability standpoint, we can stay pretty good. And honestly, it just is more affordable for our clients on that as well, because if we didn't manage that, we just have to boost what we charge, and that's not good for the end user either.
Right. So how long were you married before you guys started that business?
I think we got married in the summer, and I think we started in the fall.
Wow.
So it wasn't very long.
So you guys were planning this when you were dating?
It was our first baby, I guess.
There you go. How was that, I guess? How was that being like freshly married and then running a business with your new wife?
I honestly wouldn't do it any other way, because we didn't have much of a routine at that point in time.
Sure. Pretty
So
free. And
it's pretty free, and we both chose to do it to make that decision to start the business or take over that business at that point. And so when we didn't, and we're young. I was 21 and I got married, and we knew we wanted to start a family and all that stuff. So it just made sense to have a daycare. My wife could be, with our kids.
So your kids went to Tiny Tikes?
Yeah, our kids went to Tiny Tikes. Yes, they did. So, I mean, for us, we didn't know anything much other than that from a family standpoint. It's always been a family business ever since we got married. We've been operating our business. So,
is that the only business you own?
We operate something very similar called Wapton Youth Club,
okay.
and it's out of the Wapton School District. It's just an after-school program and a summer program, so it's more of K through 6, but very similar. A lot of the same guidelines and rules and whatnot. Yeah.
So you mentioned you went to college, right?
Yep. I went to MSUM. I was going for business administration because that's what I thought I had to do.
Sure.
And then I dropped out. I dropped out my junior year because we got married. And at that time, when you were married, you could not have insurance from your parents. And my wife, when she graduated, she took a job at a local bank in town. And but then this opportunity came in to get into business, and we talked about it, and she's like, no, you got to go do that. So she was carrying our insurance while she was working at a local bank. And then she started this business, and I had to drop out of college I got a job at a local bank, and I was carrying our health insurance, working as a teller. And I'm just like, well, I'll go back to school. No big deal. I'll carry our health insurance. We'll figure this out. We'll get our business up and running, and then I can go back to school. I never went back to school.
No plans on it, huh?
No plans at this point. I think I was probably through 300 level courses at that point in time, and I worked my way through the banking. I stayed in banking for about 10 years, and I worked my way through from teller all the way up to when I left, I was a branch manager and ag commercial lender. So
sure.
To me, that was just as probably valuable as the education that I had received at that point in time. And you learn so much stuff. And one of my most favorite things that I had or that I did during that time was talking with and working with the business owners. I just love picking their brain on how they operate, how they view things and whatnot. And I didn't like banking, but I learned so much about it. Like understanding how money works and how to leverage it is a big deal.
And that's one of the biggest struggles when you do start a business is finance and working with the bank.
Yep.
And how do you do that? Like somebody who's never done that. So that experience of you said 10 years in the bank. I bet that helped a lot when you went
have
out
your own business.
Yeah,
right.
100%. I mean, there's things that you could point at that I think that has helped us along the way. My banking background was a big deal. And then I worked for the North Dakota Small Business Development Centers. That was probably one of the most pivotal things that for us from a growth strategy standpoint, the resources you're able to find and see and just leverage. And then that was a point in time in my career for about 5 years where all I did was consult to other business owners. Man, that was so fulfilling. I mean, that was so cool. It was a federal program, so it had some of the things that you just don't want to deal with, but
sure.
The day-to-day client interaction, working with business owners or people trying to get into business, that was awesome. Like, it wasn't work. I just sat at home and, fired away on financial projections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
watching TV because it was fun. I enjoyed that stuff, and I was helping somebody get into business.
Is that what your position was like at NDSCS too?
Yep. When I was with the North Dakota Small Business Development Center, I was technically an employee of NDSCS.
Okay.
And reported to Dr. John Richmond at that point in time, and sat up in the business area. My office was next door to Ann Smith, and so I talked to those people quite often up there, and it was great. Summers are terrible. Nobody was on campus. I hated it.
Yeah, yeah, that would stink.
So what do you do now then?
Well, now I'm in economic development, but I'm transitioning out of that here soon. So kind of the same stuff, just working with businesses and local government entities. But, in my transition, I'm looking at doing a lot of that other stuff, but I'll just be employed self-employed versus employed by a local governmental agency.
Do you want to touch on building Breck?
More or less trying to give back to a community that I think I've benefited from quite a bit in Breckenridge is getting into commercial and residential real estate, and not just getting into it from a standpoint of how do you make money, but getting into it as far as how do you solve community problems. And the other thing that I'm absolutely, and this just goes back to solving problems in the business side of me, and loving business, is the role that I'm in right now. I talk to a lot of the larger employers, and they have specific needs as far as when it comes to housing, the type of employees they're looking to hire. That's exactly what I want to tackle. I would love more than anything to marry solving community needs along with business needs at the same time, and how that marries together on the real estate side, I'm really trying to understand and figure out. So that's kind of from an aspect of, if we want to call it building Breck, or if we want to do, call it anything else. There's great people from the community that are standing behind this that I think we really can get something going. But I want to be able to talk to a large employer and understand their needs and figure out how to fill that for them.
So trying to make it more attractive of a community, not just for those people, but also for people in the area to maybe live here, work for one of these larger employers, and then it's just like a better community, like whatever, through your new housing or whatever it may be, kind of sums it up.
Yeah, I don't think there's any real particular thing that we're going after other than identifying the opportunities and going after that. So, I mean, there is no real plan right now other than, meeting the employer's needs on the real estate side.
What do you want to do for new businesses in real estate?
I think there's a bunch of different ways that we could support business, and I absolutely love this concept. So if we can go in and buy a building downtown Breckenridge, and we can get it set up, investors or something like that, where we can fit up the building and attract a potential, hopefully it's a startup, a local person who just needs a little bit of help to get into it. Not only can we get them a space that they could operate in, we could do so in a way where the lease makes sense for them to get in there, and we could back them financially, and we can give them advisor services along the way so that they're more likely to be successful, instead of just saying, oh, sign this lease. Oh, by the way, it's going to be more geared towards us instead of you.
Yeah.
And then they're going to be failed, and it's a closed business within a year or two.
So it benefits both parties.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Sounds like you're like the perfect situation for a new entrepreneur that wants to come in. And sounds like that's exactly what you want to be to help grow Breckenridge, because it is really like the businesses that grow. I remember when I was in your class, and we'll touch on that, but it was talking about small towns, and it was like entrepreneurs grow small towns. So that's pretty cool. You're trying to set it up so nicely for people like that.
Yeah, to that point, a city can't go start a business, right?
Right.
And whenever a business closes, they're always like, oh, what should the city do? No, the city doesn't do anything. They can maybe incentivize something, but it's up to folks like you and I that have to go out there and buy the real estate or start the business, and other people have to support that journey along the way in order for it to be successful. But 100%, like, again, to go back to like some of the early conversations that we've had, nobody's born in their DNA on how to get into business, and they don't understand that they have to be shown a roadmap for that. And if you can show them that roadmap through, whether real estate or advisor services or any of that stuff, and ideally, for me, what I would love, even in more of the pay it forward standpoint, is I'd love to see multiple people and households and families generating net worth. So ideally, in some of those situations that we just talked about, it's a lease to own. So we could help them get into a commercial real estate, and when they get on their feet and they're healthy enough and a bank can finance them, they buy us out and they're on their own and they're stood up. and hopefully they can operate 10, 15 years and have a nice nest egg that they can pass on to their
And then
kids.
hopefully that would create more jobs for people in the community, better jobs for people, higher income jobs, then creating a better like city.
Community, yeah.
Community.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great concept. I love that. Hearing about it. You mentioned it earlier off air, but I didn't completely understand like what that's going to look like, but
Yeah.
hearing that is pretty cool. I'm
And
excited to watch that.
Breckenridge does need it. Like
Yeah.
there is nothing really, not a ton of businesses in Breckenridge, even compared to Wahpeton. So, what makes you want to do that? Like, why does it matter to you?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is just giving back. Two, for me, I think there's an opportunity, and I've been probably always wired that way, where people look at closed down buildings or shuttered up buildings downtown, and they're like, "Oh, that will never work." Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons why people go out of business, and typically it's the business owner and has nothing to do with location or any of that other stuff. So when I look at cheap real estate downtown, that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity either for me and an investment group to make money, or even better yet, to secure property and transition people into entrepreneurship or whatever that might look like into the future. So if your cost to get into business is so much less compared to other areas, you don't have to sell as much to make it work. And the way the way the world is evolving or changing into, where people are so mobile, it's not that big of a deal. Even if you have a retail presence, if you do a really good job, people will drive to you.
Right.
You don't need to be in downtown Fargo and all of a sudden have huge rents, and now you have to sell a boatload just to make the rent payment.
So right now we're sitting in an old water treatment plant. What are your plans for this?
Also, sorry, when you mentioned earlier, like a place closing up and a city doing nothing with it, that is like the definition of this place. It's like they shut it, closed the doors for the day, and then just left it. So that, and then you came and picked it up. This probably would be sitting abandoned otherwise. But yeah, what are your plans?
Yeah, they actually were going to tear this property down and then probably sell it. But so what we're looking at doing here, originally when we approached the city and asked them about it, the plans were to tear it down. And I just asked, are the bones good, and is it a good building? And Neil Crocker from the city was like, yeah, it's a fine building. It's just for what we need it for, it doesn't work. A lot of the infrastructure within it is can't be replaced and whatnot. So, so he invited me in. We toured the property, and I'm like, man, this would be a great brewery. And he's like, yeah, I know, this would be a really good brewery. And I'm like, Breckenridge, Wahpeton needs a brewery. We don't have one. And so I spent a lot of time, actually probably a year and a half, 2 years, contacting people that I knew were home brewers to try to entice them into this property and take it over and start a brewery in here. I could not get any of the people that I knew that were home brewers, and some of them were entrepreneurs, and they just could not take on the risk of this type of project. I stumbled upon some equipment that was automating the brewing process, because at that point in time I was just more of like a business development side of things. I wasn't actually thinking about how do you brew beer or anything like that to get into business. And I'm like, well, if I can automate this, I'll just figure this out, and we'll put together a project, and we'll just have some vessels in the back that are brewing beer, and we'll just serve beer here and some food and whatnot. And in this process, I was trying to understand, figure out, doing performas, business planning, all the stuff that I love to do. This is not hard for me to do. I went down and toured a brewery in southern Minnesota that had the exact same equipment that I was looking at, and went through that brewery, talking to the owners and whatnot. And in closing, as I was leaving, I just asked them one question: if you could do something different, what would you do? And without skipping a beat, the owner said, I would go into distilling, and this is the company that I would use. So I wrote it down, and about a month later, I went and reached out to this company and just asked them, like, hey, what what are you guys all about? This person mentioned this and whatnot. And they told us their story and whatnot. And I did a bunch more research on it and kind of was sitting in the whole time in the background. I was kind of feeling like we need to go to a distillery and not brewery. And what really kind of set it off was earlier this spring, we went to a Minnesota Small Business Development Center all-state meeting over in Fergus Falls. And we were actually in Fergus, or Outstate Brewing's place where it was being hosted. And we were talking to all these business advisors across the state of Minnesota that had all been helping local breweries. And they're like, hey, man, the brewing market's pretty tough right now. It's pretty saturated. They're getting beat up, between the THC drinks that have came out and craft distilling. It's really eroding back that market. And I left there and I'm like, yep, we're going to go to distilling. So I've been working with this group that sells the equipment on recipe development and things like that in order to get that all ready and set up. Distilling is a little bit different than brewing. You can make wine at home and you can brew beer at home, but you cannot distill at home. It's illegal federally. So you have to be very careful with the laws and whatnot. But
for people at home that don't know the difference, can you say it quickly?
Yes. So wine, obviously a winery, you're making wine, you're taking some sort of a fruit juice and fermenting it. A beer, you're taking some sort of a grain, wheat and mixing barley and hops and stuff in there, and you're going to make a beer. And those are the basis for making any kind of alcohol in a distillery. So you have to either make a wine or a beer, and then what you do is you take the alcohol out of that wine or beer, you heat it up, and you take the alcohol out of that wine or beer, and it becomes either a vodka or a brandy or a whiskey. And how that stuff ends up happening is there's different types of alcohol that come out through temperatures, and you collect those different types of alcohols, and then a whiskey has to be barrel aged for a certain period of time, and a bourbon has to be barrel aged for a certain period of time. There's just weird laws and rules what constitutes a whiskey or a vodka or a bourbon or brandy. But at the end of the day, you're either pulling alcohol out of a beer or a wine. So they call it a mash, but that's essentially what it is.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah, so you have it kind of planned out in this space already. What are some of your favorite parts about this space that makes you want to have a distillery in here?
Yeah, so the area we're talking in right now is going to be a tasting room. It's just under 2,000 square feet. And we could easily and comfortably put about 130 seats in here. I don't know if we'll ever get to having a kitchen in here. If it does constitute it and we think it helps, we will. But, just past this wall back here to the west, that's where we're going to put the still. So it should be pretty easy access to, putting a bar in here and whatnot. And, the rules with a distillery are pretty simple. You can only sell whatever you make on site. So if we open up our doors to the public here, we can't be selling other people's alcohol or anything like that. I do think we want to make a brewery in here at some point in time. They're getting a lot more popular where they're called brew stillers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or brew distilleries. And, I'm more of a beer drinker anyways, so I think I would be more apt for that, but I'm getting the taste of alcohol a little bit more now. So, but I think getting a brewery in here too, we have plenty of space. It's about 11,000 square foot building.
Yeah, it's big. It's a big building.
It's a big building. There's plenty of space to put stuff into. And
there's lots of history of it too. So from when you gave us the tour, my understanding is you're going to try and keep a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at all these gauges that are up here that I have no clue what they use them for, but I'm sure they're like water pressure or something like that. We want to be able to capture that and use that into decor going into the future. There's grates just right behind us. There's pipes running underneath the ground here, and we want to be able to just put glass over the top of that. So if anybody walking into this tasting room can see everything that used to be down there for the water processing plant. So we keep that feel of having a water processing facility here, and people can have a little bit of taste of history. The space we're in right now, I think, was built somewhere around 1930.
Yeah, there's on the pumps back over here, it says 1938 or 1939, and yeah, some of that stuff would be really cool to keep in here. I mean, some of the old gauges and stuff upstairs you were mentioning
Yep.
legit look like they haven't been touched since it was built. So yeah, that would be kind of cool to keep that all in here while you're opening.
Yeah, that's the intention. And you know, when we were working with the contractors and architects, they were doing a pretty good job on layouts and ideas for that.
Huge thank you to today's sponsor, Giant Snacks. Giants is a small family-owned business that specializes in premium flavor and giant snack sizes.
From sunflower seeds, pistachios, pumpkin seeds, and cashews, Giants has all the great snacks you need.
Don't forget some of the great flavors that they offer between dill pickle and sweet Thai chili.
Or whatever craving you have.
Check out some of the newest flavors coming to a store near you this fall.
Big Easy cashews and Big Easy sunflower seeds.
Available soon online or at a store near you. Once again, huge thank you to Giant Snacks for sponsoring this podcast.
Now let's get back to the podcast.
When's it going to start?
I just talked to the guys that we're looking at helping tear all this stuff out. I think they want to get going at the end of December. So if we can get everything put together, we're going to go at the end of December, and hopefully the construction can start right after that.
So what does that look like? Like future plans?
When should our
would it be-
viewers come and hang out here?
Yeah, right.
So the tasting room won't take place right away. So I think what we're going to end up doing is we're going to get everything to food grade in the back where we can actually produce alcohol. And then we're going to go right into distribution. So the distribution would be, going into the Wilkin or going into the local bars or going into the local liquor stores. And then when we can start generating revenue, then we're going to open up the tasting room.
Sure.
I know when it comes to distilleries and especially craft distilleries, the tasting room is so important. But I think we can get to the point where we can actually get into distribution and get to black pretty easily, and we can at least have some revenue to bank off before we get into here. But it is, ultimately what we want to end up doing is serving the customer a mixed drink that we've designed and is much more profitable than the bottle that we're going to sell.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's awesome to hear.
That is awesome. That'll be exciting.
So you got 20 under 40. What other, have you had any other achievements? What's the word?
What is 20 under 40?
Oh yeah, maybe talk a little bit about that. What exactly is it?
So the Wapton Daily News recognizes 20 people under 40 every single year. That was probably 5 years ago when that happened. I don't remember exactly when that took place, and I think it was the very first year they did it. But it was a blessing and an honor, and it was great. Like a bunch of really solid people in the community were up there that we got to sit shoulder to shoulder with, and share the stage with, and being recognized for being And the best thing is you get nominated, and there is a selection process too. So, being recognized as one of the top people under 40 was pretty cool.
Okay, so you're a hockey coach, you're on the school board, and now you're teaching. You've been teaching for a few years. You taught me and then took a year off. What happened with that teaching job? Like, obviously you got called on a second before. Maybe talk about that.
Yeah, the year that I got to spend with you guys in your class, the person that we had lined up to teach that, and it's not a normal class. It's not anything that is within a teacher's union or a typical teacher teaches. It's actually taught by people who are in the industry, and we never live in a classroom. We're always out of the classroom. We're always in a business. We're always talking to a business owner. So the individual we had lined up, I get an email from them. I believe it was Friday afternoon, and we were supposed to start Monday morning.
Yeah.
I'm out, and I was supposed to go on a trip with my son canoeing up in northern Minnesota, and it was one of those things where I didn't have a lot of time to plan, and I'm packing, and I'm frustrated because it just now blew up my whole world. Like, how do you decommit to the schools of Breckenridge and Wapton?
Yeah, to mention on that, it's like a course that you can take through the school. Like if I'm at Breckenridge or Wapton High School, I sign up to take it at the high school, but it's like not a high school class. It counts as a credit, but like it's not like a normal class at all, just for context for people listening.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I got packed up, and partway there, I made the decision that we're going to make the commitment, and I'll figure it out on Sunday night. And I was not going to let it ruin my weekend. And, and we had a good weekend and came back Sunday night and arranged the schedule and took it on. And because we made a commitment, we got to follow through with it. Mm-hmm. And ended up being a really good, your guys' class was really good. It was, you guys challenged me as much as I challenged you guys. And it was fun. It's always fun when there's more intensity from the students. And you guys elected to go through a class business plan on top of your own personal business plan, which was very unique. I didn't. You didn't want anything to do with it, but it was still a great process to learn all of that stuff. So, you guys went through bidding, you went through design, you went through all kinds of stuff that 18-year-olds typically don't get to do. And you sat on the backside of that trying to figure out how to make that into a business.
So what does this class look like?
Yeah, this class is typically juniors and seniors out of Breckenridge and Wapton. They typically have to have an interest in business or entrepreneurship. They don't have to necessarily be going into it, but they have to be interested or at least wanting to understand it. We met 4 days a week, and really it was just pass fail. So if you showed up and participated and you did a business plan and a pitch to the community at the end of the school year, you were going to pass. If you didn't do those things, then you would just fail. And there's always a little bit of a concern, like, okay, should we grade their business plan or whatever? And it's like, well, do I want to sit there and give Jack a B because I thought his business plan didn't have enough market research? No, we're not going to do that, because Jack is going to go and want to look good in front of the community. Mm-hmm. And typically, like, if you get up in front of a bunch of people, and these are all typically business owners and business stakeholders and parents that show up for this end of the year event, but they want to look good in front of them, and they spent a whole year working on their business plan, and it's now time to talk about that and show them what they learned. So
how many students took that class?
Your year was 7, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 2 Breck boys. It was 7, and then it was 6.
Oh yeah, yep.
And out of all of those students that took this class, I guess one of them, how many of them own their own business, I guess?
Well, 2 do right now, because actually one came back, contacted me like 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer, and like, hey, and she's going to NDSU right now, and she's like, I got this business going, and they just needed help getting their LLC filed and other things like that. So helped her set that up, but it was just great to see that, like, that another student out of that class has started a business. And I think there was another one that was already in business. I haven't touched base with that student to see where they're at, but they were doing marketing for DSG at that point.
A fishing apparel brand. I also think Ethan will be in business at some point. I think he will be.
Ethan will get into business. He has that mind. And I think he just needs the support, and he'll get there.
Yeah.
I had one question that's been stirring up in my head a little bit. He mentioned over 100 businesses you have helped start. So I have a couple questions. Are most of those people young? What was the average age, I guess?
I would say most of the people that were starting a business were probably, if I had to average it, I would be in their 30s.
Okay.
I didn't see too many early 20s or anything like that. There was quite a few in their later 20s. I think the misconception is people think they need cash to go do that. And you do. Right. Like, cash is super important to start a business. But I think too many people think they want to be financially stable and blah, blah, blah. And like, well, the second you become financially stable, you start a business, you're financially unstable, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
like you're just bumping yourself right back. So I think starting business younger when you're not financially stable makes much more sense than, getting that financial stability and then having to just bump yourself off the financial stability.
Right. And the way I viewed it too is, let's say you go work for 5-10 years. That's 5 to 10 years that you weren't working on your business. Mm-hmm. And so if you were to have started that business right away, you'd be 5 years in at that point.
And your responsibilities are way smaller.
Right.
When you're younger.
Who knows,
like
in
our
5
age.
years, you might have a kid.
Yeah.
You might have a wife, whatever it is. And you have all of these things you have to pay for. That's a lot harder to do now that you have a business that you have to try and run.
Well, if you think about this, over 90% of businesses never make it to 10 years. So
Really?
if you can get to 10 years, you have now exceeded like 95% of the businesses out there. And when you think about that too, like running a business is hard. It is taxing on an individual. It can be. And I think a lot of times having exit strategies at year 5 or year 10, just so you can get out of business. So you're talking about 5 to 10 years. That's a really long time in business. And it's just interesting perspective to go out for working 5 years. For some people where I think I can just go down and wait 10, 15 years and start a business. A lot of people could start 3 businesses and have exited out of them and been really successful along the way. And that time is very important trying to figure that out. The more you do it, the better you get. The more you understand things and can make good decisions.
Is there any niche that you're like really good at? Like you're specifically really good at, I don't know, starting up a salon or starting up a construction business or whatever it is? Because when you say start up 100 businesses, I'm just like, okay, business, like where at on the spectrum? Have you helped start a whole bunch of random ones, or do you kind of stick to like a farming niche or like a construction niche?
I would say, especially when I was doing a bunch, and these weren't necessarily startups, but maybe more acquisitions, or other, maybe startups too, but bar restaurants in rural areas.
Okay.
I worked with a ton of bars and a ton of restaurants, and I got to understand that industry pretty good because of that, and understanding more of not somewhat of the operations, but more of how do you structure that thing financially and how do you price yourself so that you can, compete and just be profitable and exist. So bar restaurants were 2 of them, which actually really helps going into the distillery side, even though, distilling is more of food manufacturing or drink manufacturing. So it's slightly different, but it's actually a lot different. But if we get into the point where we're serving cocktails, it's going to it will transition very nicely for us. Other than that, like service-based businesses, I did help with some manufacturing. I wasn't as good as manufacturing. Manufacturing is a tough one to get into. And manufacturing there's so many moving pieces of it as far as how do you be efficient? How do you get your costs down? How do you operate? Anybody who can figure out how to run a manufacturing business is very, very good. It's not an easy thing to do.
So why not just go get a 9 to 5 and just be done at the end of the day and not have to think about it? Why be an entrepreneur in your opinion?
Wow, that's a great question. I think honestly, it's just I'm wired that way. I do love creating things and building things. And I love the challenge of it, right? I think I want everybody to win, but I also want myself to win. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things that we looked at with Tiny Tikes too was just like we wanted to be the 900-pound gorilla on the block, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's just kind of how I'm wired and whatnot. But I don't know. I love the challenge of starting a business. I love the challenge of growing a business and figuring it out and how to not sell, but be profitable and whatnot. So it's much more fulfilling and rewarding starting your own thing than trying to build somebody else's vision or dream or anything like that.
It's kind of competitive too. Like a little bit of the competitiveness comes out of you. I remember being up at the business awards and it's a room full of entrepreneurs. And it's like what you just said, you want to just be more successful than every other person in this room. And that's how I feel with being an entrepreneur. It's
been great watching you guys, start this thing. Again, like it's very fulfilling and rewarding watching people do things and execute on their vision. This is no different. And I don't have a lot of spare time, but when I do, I try to watch clips and your guys' podcast. So, which is just absolutely cool. 3 months now in,
Yep.
and you know, hopefully many more months to go. You know, 10 years is a long time to run a business. So
Is that our goal? At least 10 years?
We're going to look like different creatures at that time.
Yeah, we would. Is there any advice that you would give to others? It can be with being in entrepreneurship, but just, I guess, in life in general?
Yeah, I think take risks, but, you know, calculate, do your research, but take risks. You know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And if we would have never taken risks, we would never been where we're at. I mean, even projects like this in the building that we're sitting in, extremely risky. We have a ton of exposure. Who knows what distilling will end up being? Who knows if we can get you know, a great final product? But here's what I know is that I can control so many of these things, and if I can get something that is a decent final product, and I can create something really cool out of this building, I can get that out to market and we can sell. Man, all the risks are worth it. Take the risk, but ask questions first.
Well, what I got to say to Justin is thank goodness that teacher dropped. First of all, thank goodness that teacher dropped. I don't know if that was just luck or God's hand, but thank you to everything that you've done for me, seriously, because if you didn't step in, I wouldn't be here at all. For those of you guys have seen the other podcasts, I've talked about it before, but I started a detailing company called Johnson Auto Detailing, and it was out of Justin's class. And so, like I said, without you, that wouldn't be here. The podcast probably wouldn't be here. And it's not just like that class. Like, I call you all the time about stuff, and you always answer or get right back to me right away. So thank you very much, Justin.
Yeah, not a problem, Jack. I love it. I love that I got to do that. It was not what I planned,
Yeah.
but it was a great experience for me as well. And I hope this is a friendship that goes on for a long time, and then you guys just pay it forward with whatever. But man, yeah, let's go start a bunch of businesses.
Yeah.
People start businesses, right?
Yep. Giants, thank you again for sponsoring our podcast. One thing we do at the end of the show is let you pick out one of those seeds. And we got the only one you can't take is the Big Easy, because we need that for our display. But the rest of them, you can take anything, or cashews. So
I wanted the Big Easy.
we don't have enough, otherwise we couldn't. They're really good, though.
Yeah.
So guys at home, go give them a shot at their gas stations, a new flavor. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching the Beyond the Spotlight podcast. New episode coming out next Monday at 6 p.m. We'll see you then.
Peace.
Peace.
Real ones with me, I know we gon' beat the odds. Counterfeit, guess it from the thought of it. People fake, think they need to start a kid.
Okay, guys, one thing we forgot to add in this episode, the hoodies are out now on the website, link in description. And what else, Hayden? What are we giving away?
We're giving away a pair of AirPods. Each sweatshirt equals 5 entries, and go on to our Instagram. There's a couple other ways to get entered to win without buying anything. So go check it out.
Yeah, guys, hoodies are out now. If you want to support us, that's going to be the best way to do it. Yeah, this will be the only time these hoodies are out, so make sure you go get them for the cold winter coming ahead. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.
Peace.